Hey everyone. Hey there, Brandon. Oh, looks like you're on mute right now.
Oh, I had to go somewhere I can get Wi-Fi, and that kind of put me in a place where I really can't be on camera. So, hello everyone, but I'm here.
No judgment. We just appreciate the time. And thank you all so much. Well, hey everyone. You all have been patiently waiting, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Thank you all so much for attending today's session. I am pleased to introduce our speaker today, Brandon Carter. He's the managing partner and chief creative officer here at Brain Trust Founder Studio. And today he's going to be discussing some emerging trends that he's seeing within the beauty and wellness space, namely within the skincare and body care industries. So, Brandon, I'm going to cue up your presentation and then I will turn things over to you. This will be a fun session.
Awesome, sounds good.
Oh, present too soon. There we go. All right. All right, Brandon.
Yeah, so wanted to add some context. So we were looking, of course, we're always looking at brands in the beauty space and things that are happening, and we were looking at skincare and body care and trends that we're seeing. We tapped into several resources to do what we call predictive trend analysis. So you all might be familiar with SPATE. We also have Creator IQ that's able to identify influencers and their demographic and what they're doing. And then just looking at sales data that we're able to pull from a variety of retailers and seeing how trends in social media are corresponding with increase in sales across different categories. And so extrapolating all of that data got us to here. This is an overview, and a lot of this might be review, but let's jump right in. So the big things that are happening right now is clean and natural ingredients. And the standards for clean and natural ingredients are a bit subjective. There are places like in Europe where there's a standard of what clean and natural is. And in Europe, most brands in the States are trying to meet the European standards for that claim. Us claiming our products over here in the States or where we're created in the States and are distributing internationally can vary as far as what clean and what natural mean, what that means and what that actually is. But the customer is now at a point where they're demanding clean and natural ingredients. Another thing that we're seeing is this transparency. Transparency in the efficacy and advocacy of products. So people want to not necessarily see before and afters and expect an immediate result, but have an understanding of what it takes to get them to that result, and then educating them on the steps and the ingredients that bring about a result. And then a big trend that we're seeing, which is tough to do, is personalization. So you guys know that you can go into like a Sephora or other retailers and use apps and technology to, let's say, identify a particular shade or tone for foundation. We even have a Founder Studio parfait where you can personalize the lace part and color and cut and texture and length of your wigs using their technology. We think that's going to be a big thing coming up, and will continue to expand, especially as technologies evolve and we get better at understanding and using the technology, particularly when it comes to people of color.
Thank you, Brandon. Quick question that came through. Of these trends, which is the most prominent? Do you find that founders care the most about transparency? Do they care more about the ingredients? Do they care most about personalization? I know there's overlap between these things, but of these three pillars, are any of these particularly important or more important than the others?
Yeah, really right now, clean and natural is most important. If you look at even like, let's say, CVS basic shampoo. It's paraben free, sulfate free, alcohol free. And these brands aren't necessarily getting to the claim of clean and natural, but you can see like the major conglomerates that are producing products even that are at a lower price point. The consumer is really demanding and leaning into the claims of clean and natural. The tough part about it is I could say something, anything that's derived from nature, I could say is natural,
Yeah.
and clean is a little bit hard to define. Some states like California has better definitions as far as what clean is, but across the entire market, it's really hard to divine. But we are seeing that the customer is demanding that.
Well said. Appreciate it.
Another big thing, this has been a big thing for a while, sustainability and eco-friendliness. And what this means is, one, the packaging and the product or the juice inside of the bottle. There is a push to get better and better. Again, there are regulations on what's considered eco-friendly and what's considered sustainable. And it's interesting by category, right? So like if you look at like a human hair wig, it would eventually break down. So it can make the claim that it's sustainable and eco-friendly when you may question that, but that is the case. Whereas something in, let's say, a plastic jar that has chemicals that you can't flush, is not eco-friendly and may not be sustainable. So it's interesting as we explore categories, particularly categories that members in the Founder Studio are in, where we're able to make those claims. But the expectation is that, particularly for packaging, that there is either some thought that goes into it. Another big thing is instructions, like how do you recycle a jar of, let's say, a jar of body oil or a glass jar, like where would you recycle that at? That also depends on state and local municipalities, but the customer is now wanting clarification on that and how you're really showing improving. Diversity and inclusion is something that you guys have probably talked way more about. We know it's going to be a continuing thing. We do know that there is campaigns to remove conversations about diversity and inclusion, but we don't think that's a lasting effort. I will say that dollars have been removed when it comes to particularly founders in our group, as far as how to get into the dollars that big corporations have for diversity and inclusion. So, for example, the 15% pledge happened, and all these brands committed. And if you go down the aisles, maybe in a Target, it looks like 15%, but if you go down the aisles of some of the other folks that committed, it doesn't quite look like 15%. And there was legislation, a lot of power around the Dove Act, and there was commitments to embracing hair care across other categories and with Dove's backing. And the energy around that effort, you don't see. While it was a valiant effort, it didn't have as much runway as we thought it might have had. Wellness and self-care will continue to be trends. Mindful moments. Also, there's just been an expansion lately as far as what wellness and what self-care is, and accessibility. I was having a conversation with a celebrity who's kind of like she has a persona of a around the way girl, and she was like, do I feel comfortable with my fake lashes, my lace front wig, going to a sauna and steaming through that? Like, will they know the needs of what I need and what my community needs, and can I partake in that? And then we're able to create solutions for that and create accessibility in that space. And that's something that we think is going to continue to happen. And then again, I mentioned the clean beauty certification. Here's some information just to research on what clean looks like in your municipality.
Appreciate it, Brandon. If anyone has any questions, please be mindful that you can throw them in the chat or just to reach out to me via DM if you'd like to come off of mute. And on to the next slide.
there's going to continue to be an emergence of indie brands and brands that are really selective about their SKUs, how many that they have, how many product offerings, and then where they can play. You might have seen like the Lip Bar and CVS. They're really smart in that play, remaining somewhat of an indie brand, but limiting their offering to like the key items and what they're best at. I think Lamique does a really good idea because it does well with that by being an indie brand and focusing on brows that's really specific and has a few SKUs to get the effect. But that indie spirit and that concentration on the hero product is a trend that we'll continue to see. Continued exploration and digital marketing and e-commerce will continue to be big. There have been some missteps. Like if any of you all have tried to do TikTok Shop, it can be a bit clunky. Amazon is expensive. Shopify is the standard, but is dated. I imagine there'll be new sales platforms that will emerge that we should be looking out for. Just solutions that work across multiple platforms, and for someone to be a leader kind of the way Shopify emerged as a leader. I imagine there'll be, as there is new media, I imagine there'll be new ways to transact and interact, and we should be on the lookout for that. Augmented reality is may be a trend. There was, so much discussion about Meta and the Metasphere and how people would show up and interact, and that kind of all fizzled. I know the kids are still playing games in the space, but using the space outside of gamification didn't really take off the way it would. I imagine there'll be additional attempts to figure out how to incorporate augmented reality into the beauty space. Some of the systems that exist now, like where you can change your hair color or you can apply a filter, are still a bit clunky. And I think as the computers learn more about us, those things will get better. And then influencers and user-generated content will still be a big thing going forward. It's just something that's not going to go away. I will say, though, that in the same way that we're predicting new ways to convert, I imagine influencers through affiliate programs and other programs will also be exploring ways to convert. I see a lot of capsule collections from influencers in store, and when they do it in a really delicate, neat way, it works really good. Let me give you an example, like Tamitha Brown and spices, like 3 items really specific, key to her audience, brought in a really effective way. That's a different category, but that's an influencer figuring out how to profit directly versus going through multiple channels to convert.
Does anyone want to come off mute? Does anyone have any particular questions for Brandon? I know we're moving, through this stuff. All right, we will keep on. Oh, Ariel, did you have something?
Hey, yeah. Thanks again for this. I'm sorry, I'm getting ready for a little pop-up tonight. I'm trying to get my stuff together. But I am enjoying this just kind of an overview of the year. Can you also talk about, if like kind of where things are with the scalp care, hair care, that segment too, because that's kind of where we are with Beats Bayou, at least right now. And I do agree with the validation, that part of like brands really focusing on the testing part, and influencers and like validation, because there's just so many brands out there. So if you have other suggestions on like really standing out, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the best way I can do is give you an example of an activation I went to recently that was really kind of cool. So they had, I don't know the proper term for it, but a microscope of sorts, and it looked at your scalp, and you were able to see how many hair follicles you had, dry skin, that kind of thing. And the I believe she was a dermatologist slash um, product provider. She was able to recommend a regimen based on you, and it's kind of experiential. But I mean, you have everybody all up in your head, but it's kind of cool, like to see like your
It is.
scalp on the screen. So I thought that was a cool thing. There's a lot of like education that's kind of missing in the space, and a lot of like competing opinions. And I think one thing that I see as a trend is like breaking away from legacy and like trying to figure out how to do that in an innovative way. Because like people aren't greasing their scalps anymore. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not a good thing, but I know connected to community and legacy, it's something that seems like a natural course to do. And then I think that there's probably an opportunity for additional education about healthy oils and harmful oils and things of that nature. So I think that there's some areas of
Love it.
opportunity, but the tech piece, I think that could be interesting. And then just how to like be innovative and breaking away from legacy.
Love it. Thank you.
Just to tag on, Brandon, I think you're absolutely right. In the work that we've done with the venture fund, we are seeing a real push away from legacy brands. It seems like trust is a real foundation for a lot of consumers these days. That's why, you know, being able to bring on an influencer that has established trust with people, being an indie brand also helps. Being able to have an aspect of personalization creates a better through line with consumers that these larger brands no longer have because they're just so big. So yeah, it seems like, you know, the tides are shifting and changing, and being able to establish trust is the best way to grow as an emerging brand. And that can make you a good target for acquisition. So Brandon, I just wanted to give you your chops there because that's showing up from our research as well.
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
There was another question about other trends that are happening outside of beauty per se. I have seen something, and this is still kind of in the beauty space, but I think we'll see more of it. And that's like embracing things that were considered flaws and highlighting them. Let me give you an example. So now they used to have those like patches where you put on your pimples and they match your complexion. Now those companies are starting to make stars and diamonds and fun stuff where it's like, I'm not ashamed. I have this pimple and I'm treating it. You're saying the same. You're going to see the same thing with like stretch marks, like folks that have been on weight loss journeys and have changes in skin. You're going to start to see more embrace of that and highlighting of that in innovative ways. So that's kind of a stretch beyond traditional beauty, but it's something that we're seeing. And this whole idea of like taking care of your mental health and identifying like your own standards of beauty that support a healthy mental state. We'll see that to trend. And we've already seen it really trending with women, but we'll continue to see a trend with men as well.
well said. Oh, and I think we have one other question. Denise wants to know, for brands that are not in beauty per se, how do these observations cross over into their space? So more specifically, and Denise, feel free to come off mute if I'm totally doing a bad job here, but Denise's brand is inside of the fragrance space. So Brandon, do you find that some of these insights have applicability to sectors like fragrance, or do you think that's a bit of a different game?
Yeah, and just to chime in there, sorry, Brenda, just to chime in further, I'm fragrance, but home fragrance, right? Which is a whole different category from, you know, traditional perfumes and lotions, et cetera. So, you know, I'm in the home fragrance space. So I feel like there is some applicability, but would like to dive in a bit deeper.
Honestly, I would have to get back to you about that. I do know that customization piece just in fragrance in general is a thing. And then there's going to be a rejection of synthetic fragrances. And I don't know, I've just looked into this lightly. I don't know the difference between like, I mean, I know this was like an essential oil in a real fragrance, but I don't know what makes a fragrance synthetic. And that might be something that you've already challenged. But I know there's going to be a rejection for synthetic fragrances.
Got it. Thank you so much. And yeah, there's a very fine line. I think some of this ends up being, folks are hearing a lot about like, natural ingredients and, soy wax versus, other waxes in their candles, but they don't necessarily know the reason why. And so, part of what I've been trying to embrace is really educating folks on some of the nuances and that, they want a candle that burns cleanly and the scent throw is there. And so that may mean embracing some of those quote natural types of ingredients, but they are not necessarily any more or less harmful. So I think some of it is just, it sounds like education, but the customization piece, I think is definitely something I've been looking into as well, using AI, other technologies to, help folks to determine like what would be the best candle based on your mood type or your aesthetic in your home and those types of things. So this is all good stuff. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. My pleasure.
All right, moving on to the next slide.
This is basically more of the same. I do think that you'll start to see a trend in holistic wellness. And that what that could look like is companies that are making topicals, making ingestibles, and treating either problems or creating solutions internally and externally. Mobile apps and tools, I think, will continue to be a thing. I think less apps and more tools or ways to use existing apps that are extremely popular. A big thing is community building. There's still like that. There's still a mature, particularly crowd on in certain categories, like when Facebook groups were really, really popular, and for some people they still are. But that sense of community and creating that, I think people feel like that's missing or can show up in other ways. And I think that there'll be some innovations on how to bring back community. And then partnerships and collaborations will continue to be a thing. I think that some of the best brands are still missing the mark on cultural connections, and we'll continue to reach out to our community for cultural insights and partnerships to expand their customer base.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's anecdotal, but I wonder if there's a connection between access to funding and resources for the brands that are dominating and brands that are closer to the culture that have some of that context. But it's interesting.
Yeah, when people were protesting in the streets, all the brands had money.
It's funny how priorities can change. But I think for a lot of the brands that are a part of the studio, that can be particularly encouraging. It's just much cheaper for these large conglomerates to acquire an emerging niche brand that can speak to these different demographics, as opposed to trying to build something from the ground up on some, with a particular demographic that they have no cultural context with, that, could potentially be more damaging than just buying up a brand that's already doing the work. So the acquisition market, I believe, is going to look pretty interesting over the next few years, especially as we're navigating this economic downturn and we're seeing where things are going to shake up. I think over the next few years, it's going to be really interesting to see what brands get bought up. So I know it's hard, but keep on working because there's a good chance you all get bought up in these next few years. So just keep on grinding. All right, Brandon, here we go.
These are some things that we're going to see in social media. I spoke to this already, but this concept of psychodermatology, people are going to embrace acne, embrace scars, and then embrace things that people considered flaws openly and more forward. Another thing that we're seeing is postbiotics. I did not even know. I've heard, of course, of prebiotics, but postbiotics, particularly in digestibles, is something that's going to continue, which is going to be a big thing. This idea of slugging products, I was somewhat familiar with, but it's over applying products overnight. It typically doesn't, like, it typically isn't like a cultural thing that Black and brown people always tap into, because the idea of like messing up your satin pillowcases is not like what people want to do. But you're going to continue to see that, and it's where you over apply a moisturizer overnight as part of a routine. And then skinmalism will be a thing. So you're going to see like a resurgence of like shimmers, tinted moisturizers, and things that have a minimal effect versus things that have a dramatic effect.
Well, Brandon, thank you. That was really, really informative. We're just going to leave a little bit of time for you all to ask any additional questions that you may have. You did ask during the presentation. So, yeah, Brandon, again, thank you so much. And anyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to come off of mute, and we'll just take the next minute or two to give you some room.
Can I hop in with a question?
Yeah, of course. Who's speaking? I don't see any. Oh, okay, yeah, what's up?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm kind of hiding. Thanks so much for that presentation. I joined a few minutes late, so if you covered this already, just like smile and nod at me. But I'm curious, as you know, as up and coming brands, our access to more complex ingredients is in like patented ingredients and like blends and things like that. We've got our patented XYZ complex kind of thing. How much of that is really coming into play that you think is, truly makes a brand more competitive versus just being simple, clean, and like really crisp about what the brand is standing for?
And my assessment, and I've talked to this about Ryan about another range of products that didn't have that thing, that kind of differentiator. I think that's going to continue to be really important, particularly in places where it's the product offering is really, really saturated. So I just think that one special active ingredient is going to be a really important thing. As far as access to that, that's really tricky. But there are Kendrick actually can connect you with some manufacturers that are pioneering in that space offline. But I definitely think it's going to be important that there's something that is a differentiator. And let me give you an example of kind of like a evolution. So like if you think of like Carol's daughter, it was 15 years ago novel that she was making products in her home and taking the manufacturing process and doing that. But now with like young girls into STEM and the boys into Roblox and this whole like trend towards technology, people are just more aware of how we're interacting in the tech spaces. And I think that that's going to, be a trend that people are going to come to expect, something innovative in product offerings.
And do you think like having patented ingredients versus unique raw ingredients, like where is the sort of the trend going there?
Towards both, actually, like the differentiator, but I think that like raw, clean, natural, all of that is still going to be a big trend and something that people expect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Just to quickly chime in, and Brandon, feel free to add some context or color here. But I think in relation to patented products versus more natural products, I don't think they necessarily need to be mutually exclusive. Not saying that that's what you're implying, but I think the natural piece seems to be the priority. And if you have something that only you have been able to develop, then by all means patent it. But I think there should be some process in regards to vetting what works before you go ahead and go through the whole patent process, because you wouldn't want to patent something that may not have much positive effect on your users, or is going to generate very much revenue or money for the brand. So it can be a tough chicken and egg to deal with that, but I just wanted to chime in and say that. But also on the ingredient piece, we had a great conversation a few weeks back with AJ Ade with Sula Labs, actually based out of LA. And she works with Black brands to create formulations. And she works with brands to find different ingredients for new product lines they want to launch. And she specializes in testing. She's a PhD from UCLA, super, super dope. She's an agency partner. And she's willing to meet with brands anytime. So if you're interested, happy to make that connection, Orion. And the same goes for anyone else here in the studio as well. I think she's a great resource for anyone that's just looking to think through new formulas to test out. Well, you know me, y'all. I'm not gonna hold you, so it's been a good session. This has been very, very good. Elena, I will reach out with AJ information. Her session's gonna be uploaded to the app this afternoon. I'm catching up with a lot of the uploads, so be on the lookout for that. I'll shoot out a message. But yeah, Brandon, thank you so much for the session. We really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for attending and engaging. I will follow up with everyone here who's reached out regarding AJ's information, and we will see you on Friday for our virtual coffee chat session where we will introduce new founders, talk about new opportunities that are present within the studio, and celebrate some wins. So be sure to tune in for that. We're trying to implement some new formatting for these type of discussions with the Founder Friday coffee chat. So if you all want to shout anything out, like a crowdfunding campaign or a pitch competition, if you want us to, like something on social media or vote for you for something, be sure to either reach out to me to shout it out or come to the session so you can shout it out, and we'll follow up and support you live. So I'm really excited for Friday, and we can't wait to see you all there. And yeah, have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye. All right.